Well, hey, it's good to see you today, and we're going to get started in just a minute, but I want to tell you what we're going to do next week because we're starting a brand new series, and it's called, it would be good if I knew what it was called, wouldn't it? Matters of the Heart. It's called Matters of the Heart, and what we're actually going to be talking about is something incredibly relevant for you because if all of last year didn't convince you of this, the fact that a recession is coming, and we'll talk about what that means. I'm not prophesying anything or anything weird. It's just we always have them. They come, you know. The fact that those are coming, the fact that last year was the way it was, isn't this a great time to see what does God have to say about money? I mean, your money matters. It matters to you. It matters how you use it. It matters to God. It matters to your heart. And so we're going to talk about this. And before you think, oh, it's a giving series, I need to skip the next 3 or 4 weeks so I don't have to hear about that. No. We're talking about budgeting. We're talking about spending. We're talking about saving. We're talking about retirement. We are talking a little bit about generosity. We're talking about all of these things because God has incredible wisdom when it comes to money. And it's been around for thousands of years. And it's amazing if you follow it, how well it actually works. And so we're going to spend some time talking about that. And the reason I tell you that is one, because I hope you'll be a part of it. But two, I hope that you'll invite somebody to be a part of it. Because like I said, this isn't going to be several weeks on you need to give more money. This is going to be several weeks on what does God say to do with the money that I have. And so please be a part of that. Bring somebody with you. But today we are finishing up a series called For You. And we've been talking about how God is for us. And as I got to thinking about today and what we're going to talk about today, I realized, it's funny the things that we talk about. We talk about the things that we think about. And vice versa. The things we think about are the things that we talk about. And so I kind of like, well, what are people thinking right now? What's going on through people's heads? So I spent a little bit of time on social media just to see kind of what is everybody talking about right now. Found a few things. One, there's a really popular video of a dog walking on a big exercise ball somehow with all 4 paws and stays balanced on the ball, which is actually pretty cool. I don't know that it means anything, but that's pretty cool. People are talking about the vaccine, of course, and coronavirus. People are talking about the government. There was one video I saw that was really good where people are pranking members of their family. They wait till somebody falls asleep on the couch and they get the clippers and just take a big shot right out of their head, so they get a big stripe right there, which I think would be hilarious because some of the rest of you could go with the ball, right? So this is what's on social media. So that wasn't super helpful. There's people lip syncing on TikTok, and it's kind of like, what does this have to do with anything? So I'm like, what are people thinking about? So then I went to Google, and Google actually has a really cool feature where it will show you what were the top 10 things people were searching for last year. What were people thinking about? What were they wondering about? What questions did they have? And so I got the top 10 list of Google searches from 2020. And so it's probably not super surprising. We'll put it up here and show it to you here in a second, but it's probably not super surprising. Some of it was about coronavirus and how do you get it and the vaccines and all that other stuff. Some of it was about the election and government and politics, those types of things. Zoom, I don't know if you remember this. There was a time where almost nobody knew how to use Zoom, and now everybody is sick of Zoom, So, I mean, we got up to speed on that real quick. Unfortunately, there were some famous people that passed away, and people were kind of checking on that. And then in all that happened last year, I mean, everything that happened last year, you know what the number 10 most popular search was? PlayStation 5. We may have a pandemic, but we are getting our gaming in, right? I mean, we are going to get our gaming in no matter what happened. This is what people are thinking about. This is what people are talking about. And as I look at that list, I gotta be honest, I talked about a lot of those things myself with my friends, my family, and people around me, a lot more than I probably would have in another year. But last year, that's what was happening, and that's what we were talking about. Now, for me personally, and for you too, there's things you get excited about. There's things you love to talk about. And I don't mean excited mad. I mean excited you enjoy it. You're passionate about it. And so in my world, some of the things I like to talk about, I love World War II history. So I read about it. I love to talk about it. I love to find somebody else that knows about it, talk to them about that. I love talking about baseball. I'm a football fan, so I like talking about football. I also really, really enjoy health stuff, like what's good for me and exercise and sleep and all that kind of stuff. And then finally, probably not super surprisingly, I like to talk about spiritual things. Now, my wife, who I love, and she went to first service, so I can say whatever I want, she has been telling me lately that you keep telling the same stories. Every time we drive by here, you tell me the story about that. You keep talking about the same things. It's like, I love you, but you need some new material, because over and over and over, it's the same thing. And I'm like, but I like World War II history. I like baseball. I like football. I like health stuff. I like spiritual things. Have I ever told you guys that I really like World War II history and I like talking about baseball and football and health stuff and spiritual? I mean, we talk about what we love. So what about you? What do you talk about? Whatever it is, it's what you think about, right? It's what's kind of running through your brain. And some of it does have to do with stage of life, right? If you have little kids at home, you talk a lot about little kids, their firsts and the things they're doing and how other parents figured out this and if you're getting any sleep and that's what you talk about because that's what's going on in your world. If you're on the other end and you're getting close to retirement, you think about money and investments and healthcare and what do we do and what's it going to be like if we're not working anymore and what does this world look like and how are we going to manage that season of life? If you have teenagers, you talk a lot about how they're doing crazy stuff. They've lost their minds, and you are losing yours because of what they're doing. And you talk to other parents of teenagers, you're like, is it wrong that I want to hurt them? No, I do too. We just don't do it, but we want to. Those are the things that we talk about. There's one thing we don't talk about, though. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's one thing a lot of people don't talk about. And it's kind of ironic because it's one of the things that really we need to talk about the most. And it's something that Jesus did over and over and over. Jesus kept talking about the thing that no one else was talking about. And he kind of even implies, look, if you're going to follow me, you're going to do the same thing. If you want your life to matter, you're going to find yourself talking about what no one else is talking about. And so we're going to kind of look at this experience that Jesus had today, this conversation that, and I'll just kind of put it out there right now. It's weird. It's very awkward. It's uncomfortable. I mean, Jesus is the only one that seemed settled and happy in the whole thing, right? I mean, the person he was talking to was kind of a little put off. The people that were with him were a little confused. The people that joined later, a crowd showed up, were kind of like, what's going on here? And yet Jesus has no problem here. He is fine talking about what nobody else is talking about. He is fine with the awkward. He is fine with the uncomfortable. And in this, he kind of gives us a pattern. And so if you've got a Bible or you've got to follow along in the app, we're going to be in John chapter 4. But before we read about this conversation, let me just kind of tell you what's been going on. When Jesus went public, right? Today it would be like when he released his first YouTube video. I mean, he went viral right away. I mean, he went from a guy that nobody knew within a couple of weeks, a guy that everybody was talking about. And when he went public in a part of his country that was known as the region of Judea. And we'll talk about this in a minute on the map and explain why that matters. But he was in this little region of the world called Judea, and he was just exploding. Like everywhere he went, there were crowds, and people wanted to hear him. And what was unusual was his cousin, John the Baptist, almost the exact same age as him, was also very popular in that world and also drew big crowds. And John was eccentric. If you read a little bit about John's clothes, he just wore a camel skin. Like he literally cut the skin off a camel and then he tied it around himself with a leather belt. So he kind of dressed weird. He ate weird stuff. He lived on locusts. He ate little bugs. That's what kind of kept him going. And he was passionate and he was fiery. And I think people wanted to hear what he had to say. I also think it was one of those deals of, you got to see this dude, man. He's crazy, right? Let's just go check this out because this guy's wacko. Nobody else is like him. And so he would draw crowds too. And it wasn't long before the crowd that Jesus was drawing was bigger than the crowd that John was drawing. Now, John was fine with this. He's like, hey, man, that's fine. I want to follow him too. I'm actually trying to point people towards him. But there were a lot of people on the outside that started comparing the two. Well, which one's right? Who's more important? Is it Jesus or is it John? And then there were some critics that even started playing them off of each other and tried to drive a wedge between them. And Jesus kind of sees all this happening and he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to have anything to do with that. He says, I'm not interested in the competition. I'm not interested in the controversy. I'm just going to leave. And so he does. He goes back to his hometown and the region he grew up in, which is called, his hometown was Nazareth. The region was called Galilee. Now, here's why this matters. So you don't have to be a history major or a map person or whatever, but let me just explain it this way. If you looked at the country of Israel on the map, then and now, the southern part of the country was called Judea, right? And that's where Jesus and John were at the beginning. The northern part of the country is called Galilee, and that's where Nazareth, where Jesus grew up. That's where he lived. And in between, the middle section was called Samaria. And so, if you were in Judea and you wanted to go to Galilee, it was easy. You just walk straight north for a couple of days and you'd be there. And the same way, if you were in Galilee and you wanted to go to Judea, you walk straight south for a couple of days and you'd be there. Except no Jewish person would do that. You see, the Jewish people and the Samaritan people did not get along. And let me put it in these terms and you'll know exactly what I mean as soon as I say that. To the Jewish person, the people that lived in Samaria, they were those people. They were them. And we don't deal with them. And we don't talk to those people. As a matter of fact, it was so hard and so strange between these two cultures that if you were Jewish, you didn't go through Samaria. You literally added a few days of walking to your journey and you went around. That is what a good Jewish person would do, because we don't talk to them, we don't deal with them, and we don't even go through their country. So much was this division between them that they just wanted nothing to do with each other. And Jesus says, hey guys, the ones that were following him, when he was ready to leave Judea, he goes, if you want to come with me, I'm heading back home, and we're going through Samaria. Which every Jewish person that was following Jesus at that time would have had a tightening and you know we're not supposed to do that, right? I mean, we're not supposed to go through Samaria. And Jesus doesn't hear it. He's like, if you're coming with me, I'm going through Samaria. And that's where we're going to pick it up. John chapter 4, verse 4 says it this way. It's talking about Jesus, now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. That's kind of some Old Testament history, helps them see that this is a place that's been here a long time. And Jacob's well was there. And Jesus was tired from his journey, and he sat down by the well. It was about noon. Now, let me just tell you, don't lose your place. Let me just tell you this. The climate in this part of the world is a lot like Phoenix, and it's hot, okay? It's not the wintertime, and we know that from some of the things that Jesus says here later. It's probably somewhere between 95 and 105. You've been in this. You know what this feels like. It's a hot day, and they're out walking in the heat, so it makes sense that he wants to stop at this well. Verse 7, when a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. And the Samaritan woman said to him, you're a Jew, and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. And Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Now let's stop there for just a moment. I got a question for you. Do you know what elevator protocol is? Like if you get on an elevator and you're on by yourself and the doors open and somebody else gets on that you don't know, right? There's a protocol there, isn't there? Like you're allowed to look at them. You can kind of nod. You might even say good morning, and they get on and they push their button, and you both stand still and stare straight ahead. Don't look, don't say anything, don't wait. You just wait till the doors open and somebody gets off again. And then it's like, okay, I can relax again. There's elevator protocol. There's also ATM protocol. Right? Some of you guys don't even know what I'm talking about. These machines that you put your card in and it spits money back out at you, which cash you can actually use to buy stuff. You don't have to, anyway. There's ATM protocol. If you go up to the ATM, how weird would it be if somebody got up right next to you, kind of stuck their head over their shoulder and said, hey, I'm next. You'd be like, back off, especially in COVID world. It's like there's a distance, there's an acceptable distance. You have to stand away from me while I use the ATM. And when people break those protocols, feels weird, right? We kind of wonder, are they trying to hurt me? Are they trying to steal from me? Or are they trying to do something? What are they doing? Jesus just broke a whopper of a protocol. I mean, it is hard for us to get our heads around this, but there was obviously an ethnic issue here, right? He's Jewish and she is Samaritan. I mean, she points it out herself, right? He is religiously, he's a Jew, she is a Samaritan. They worship differently in different ways and different things. So there's another protocol there. And on top of that, in this culture especially, it didn't matter if you were Jewish or Samaritan or anything else. Men that did not know women did not speak to women in public. They just didn't do that. And so Jesus breaks all of these things, gender, religion, ethnic. He breaks all of them all in this moment. And you know that she gets this because to be honest, she's a little sarcastic. I mean, she kind of almost says to him, in essence, Jesus asked her for a drink of water, and she's like, why are you talking to me? Aren't you supposed to be better than me? Why are you talking to me? And she kind of creates this controversy. But Jesus, he just completely sidesteps the controversy. He's just not going to do it. Jesus sidesteps the controversy. He's like, I'm not going to argue about this. I'm not going to defend myself. We're not going to start a movement. We're not going to have a debate. I'm not going to talk to you about this. I've got something more important to talk to you about. Because, and we're going to find out, Jesus wants her to know that God has something for her. So Jesus sidesteps the controversy to continue the conversation. And look what happens next in verse 11. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? She completely missed what he was talking about. Jesus was talking about something spiritual, and she's still thinking water that's in the bottom of the well. Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock? And Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water, welling up to eternal life. He's trying to communicate to her, I'm trying to give you something here. I'm trying to show you something here. Verse 15, the woman said to him, sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming back here to draw water. She's not getting it, right? I mean, they're just, they're talking about two different things. And again, even in the moment, I mean, I don't know if it's out of anger or confusion or whatever else, but she kind of is like, who do you think you are? Like, you're talking about living water and not needing to drink anything. Are you greater than Jacob? He's the guy that dug this well. Are you saying you're better than him? She tries to create a comparison. And Jesus sidesteps the comparison too. He's not going to do the controversy. He's not going to do the comparison. He just sidesteps all of it. And he says, listen, I really have something important for you. I really want you to hear this. But he's also getting that she's missing the point, right? He's trying to talk to her about life. She's just not getting it. So he kind of changes tactics. He sidestepped the comparison, and now he changes tactics, and he talks about something else. Look at verse 16. He tells her, go call your husband and come back. I have no husband, she replied. And Jesus said to her, you're right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you've had 5 husbands, and the man you are with now is not your husband. What you've just said is quite true. And the woman said, sir, I can see you're a prophet. Our ancestors worshiped at this mountain, but you Jews claim the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. Woman, Jesus replied, believe me, the time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know, and we worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming, and is now come, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship him in spirit and in truth. And the woman said, I know that Messiah, the one called Christ, he's coming. And when he does, he will explain everything to us. And Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, am he. Now, it almost feels a little mean, right? I mean, she just wasn't getting it. She wasn't clicking. And Jesus says, go call your husband, knowing exactly what the answer was going to be. And you think, was he trying to embarrass her? What is he trying to do? He's trying to point out something. And I think it's something that a lot of us can identify with, and it's a lot of the people in our community can even identify with. Your life hasn't been what you expected it to be, has it? I mean, you probably had this picture of your life, that you were going to get married and you were going to have a family and it was going to be great and you were going to live here in this town or whatever town you grew up in and everything was going to be perfect and your kids were going to grow up to be handsome and beautiful and wonderful and this was just going to be your dream, right? This is the life you expected, but it's not the life you're living. And I think for a lot of people that resonates. They realize, yeah, yeah. I mean, it really hasn't been what I expected it to be. It doesn't necessarily mean it's all bad, but it hasn't been what I expected either. And catch this, Jesus, he loves her too much to leave her broken and hopeless. See, he knows that she's hopeless. He knows that she's broken. And he's been trying throughout this whole conversation, talking about things that nobody else is talking about, to get her attention and to point her to better, to let her understand God has something better than this for you. And she's missed it. So he's changed gears so that he can get her attention, and it hit her really close to home, right? I mean, she does what we all do. When the conversation gets a little too deep, when it gets a little too intense, if it's actually with a real person, you can't just shut the screen off, change the subject, right? Let's talk about something else. You guys say to worship here, and we say worship over here, so, this is kind of confusing, and, it's religion. It's just, it's confusing, and I don't know, and what am I supposed to do? And she just kind of tries to bring up this religious debate. And I don't know about you, but I've been in so many conversations like this, where you kind of try to point somebody towards God, and then they start asking questions, and well, what about this, and what about that, and let's just change the subject. And in essence, she says, this is too confusing. We can't figure this out. We're waiting for God to do something, and then we'll know. And not only has Jesus sidestepped the controversy and the comparison, now he sidesteps the confusion. And he brings her to a place of clarity. And he says, it is not about where. It is not about the rules. It is not about your ancestors or your ethnicity or your prior religion. It's not about any of those things. It's about a person. It's about a person. And yes, I know there are controversies out in the world. And yes, I know there are things you can compare this and that and the other. And yes, I know sometimes things are confusing. But don't be confused about this. It's about a person, and that person is here now. And she finally has this moment. She finally gets it. It finally kind of penetrates. Look at verse 27. She says it this way. Just then his disciples returned, and they were surprised to find him talking to a woman. But no one asked, what do you want, or why are you talking to her? They'd finally kind of learned not to question Jesus too much. And then leaving her water jar, I think she was probably embarrassed. All these people show up. She's kind of had this moment. She literally drops what she was doing. Leaving her water pot, the woman went back to the town. And when she got back to the town, she said to the people, come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? And they came out of the town and made their way towards him. Now, don't miss what just happened right there. That is huge. That is huge. There's this woman that finally understands what Jesus is saying to her, that God has better for her, that there's a different life available, that even though she's disappointed with the way it's gone, it can still get better than it's been. And she goes back to a town to tell the people what happened. The people that already knew her story. This is a small town. You don't have 5 husbands and live with a guy and nobody knows. I mean, they knew. And not only did they know, chances are they didn't want to talk to her. And they really didn't want her talking to them. But she goes back into this town in the middle of the day, mind you. Again, put your Phoenix brain on. It's 105. But what she says and the way she says it is so emphatic and so impactful that even though they don't want to talk to her, even though she is looked down on, even though it's the hottest part of the day, we got to go find out what she's talking about. We have to get up and walk over there because whatever it is that happened to her, whatever conversation she had, it has changed her so much, even in just these moments. We got to go see what's going on. And they begin to come out. And if you kind of picture it in your mind, there's a small well with probably a simple palm tree roof over it that's on the outskirts of town. And pretty soon, everybody in the town starts walking towards the well. And as they come, there's this incredible moment that Jesus has with his disciples. Look at verse 31. Meanwhile, kind of back on the island, his disciples urged him, Rabbi, eat something. But he said to them, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. And the disciples said to each other, kind of look, could somebody have brought him food? Did somebody bring him food? I mean, they're stuck on food. They're missing it, just like this woman missed it. And so Jesus explains it. He says, my food, said Jesus, is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. And just, again, keep your finger right there. Just get what Jesus is saying. He goes, there is nothing more satisfying than doing what God has called me to do. It's not about the job. It's not about the money. It's not about the achievements. It's not about hitting your goals. It's not the dream vacation. It's not accomplishing the thing you've always wanted to do. Those are great, but there is nothing more satisfying than doing what God has called you to do. Nothing is going to match that. And they're there. And in my mind, this is he's finally got their attention. They're kind of starting to track with him a little bit. And as this crowd's walking towards him, in my mind, what I see is Jesus pointing at the crowd. He's saying, guys, look at this. Look at this. Here's how he says it. Don't you have a saying? Verse 35, don't you have a saying? It's still 4 months until the harvest. I tell you, open your eyes. Look at the field. They are ripe for harvest. Even now, the one who reaps draws a wage and harvests a crop for eternal life, so that the sower and the reaper may be glad together. Thus the saying, one sows and another reaps is true. Jesus, I sent you to reap what you didn't work for. Others have done the hard work, and you have reaped the benefits of their labor. And it's just such a compelling picture. There's this group of people coming towards us. We didn't even want to go here. We didn't want to go through this town. And if we came through, we certainly didn't want to stop. And now you've got a crowd coming here. This isn't right. Jesus just, and I think Jesus' words are not just to his followers 2,000 years ago that were gathered around him at the well. I think he's saying this to everyone that follows him, me and you included. Because the objection would have been, the thought process would have been, Jesus, maybe you're new here, right? They don't like us. They don't agree with us. As a matter of fact, Jesus, they think the world works one way, and we know it works a different way. I mean, they don't even see things the right way. Jesus, I mean, they're just wrong. They don't even know it. I mean, we're right, by the way, but they're wrong. And because they're wrong, and because we tell them that they're wrong, they don't like us. And they don't want to talk with us. They don't agree with us. And so Jesus, it's just a lot easier to avoid them. We really don't need to get tangled up in all this, Jesus, because you know what? Let's just bottom line this, okay? Jesus, not only do they not like us, not only do they not agree with us, not only do they not see the world the way we see it, Jesus, they're not going to believe what we tell them anyway. I mean, really? Because, I mean, obviously, they're not going to believe it anyway. So why should we even talk to them about this? And Jesus in essence says, look, if there's a problem in this whole process, it's not that people don't agree. That's not the problem. It's not that you can't avoid the people you don't agree with. That's not a problem at all. It's not that they don't like you. It's not that they don't see the world the same way you do. None of those things are the problem. And it's not even the problem that they don't believe. There's only one problem in this whole process. The only sticking point is if the harvesters, the followers, the disciples, the people that have said they want to follow Jesus, the only sticking point in all of this is if they can't or won't go into the field and work the harvest. That's the only problem in all of this. It's not about agreeing. It's not about everybody liking each other. It's not about being on the same page. It's not about knowing that they're going to believe what you have to say. It's really just one little question. Will you go and work in the field? That's really all Jesus is asking them to do. And I think Jesus understands completely. I think that's why he picked Samaria. I think that's why he stopped in Sychar. I think that's why he started this conversation with this woman and broke all these protocols, because he wanted to teach them something. And I think he's teaching us too. And not only did they go through a place they didn't want to go, not only did they stop at a spot they didn't want to stop at, they ended up staying 2 more days, because look what happens. As a result of Jesus insisting on having this conversation in verse 39, many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did, she said. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 more days. They didn't want to go through there. Now we're having a 3-day weekend. And because of his words, many, many more people believed. And they said to the woman, we no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we've heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world. 2 days ago, most of the people in that town would have said, I don't want any Jewish people stopping here. I don't want to hear what they have to say. I don't agree with them. I don't believe what they think, and I don't want to have anything to do with them. And 2 days later, many people become believers and followers in Jesus, even though they didn't agree, even though they were on the wrong side, even though. Because in Jesus' world, the harvest was ripe. And somebody had to go work the field, and so he did. And all of this to say, and I know I'm probably pushing you a little bit this morning. I know you might be feeling a little uncomfortable. What do you talk about? What do you talk about? Do you talk about the things that are most important? And I'm not saying exclusively. Obviously, we're going to talk about a lot of things, but where do you put your best? Where do you put your best conversational energy? Because it's so easy, and I fall down this hole all the time, and maybe you do too. It's so easy to fall down the hole of putting my best conversational energy into all the controversy, right? Into all the division, into all the things that don't make sense, into all the things that people don't agree with, all the stuff that I don't like about what this person's doing or what that person's doing, and how this side and that side, and they don't agree, and you know what? Obviously, I'm right and they're wrong, and it's so easy to put your best conversations and best conversational energy into the controversy. Or maybe it's not the controversy. Maybe it's the comparison. Maybe for you, it's kind of sitting around thinking about, wow, man, things are so different now. They used to be so much better. Or if only this could happen, it would be so much better than it is. Or this leader's a good leader, and this leader's a terrible leader, and this leader's, perfect, and this leader's an idiot. And, we compare everything, and we put all our energy into those comparisons. And don't get me wrong, there are good and bad leaders. There are things that are different. I'm not saying that. But where do you put your best conversational energy into? Or maybe it's even the confusion, because I'll be honest with you, the confusion's kind of fun. Like, I don't know how many times last year, and again, maybe I'm the only one, but something would happen, and I'm kind of over here scratching my head saying, what is going on out there? I mean, I don't get this. I don't understand how we got here. I don't understand why this is happening. And it's easy to kind of fall down the hole and spend all my time and energy and conversations about what's confusing. Or better yet, If the controversy and the comparisons and the confusion are too hard, just keep it on the surface. Just don't say anything about anything, right? Never really have a meaningful conversation. And let me just ask you this morning, if you're a follower of Jesus, don't do that. Don't settle for that. Don't give in to that. Because Jesus is inviting us to come alongside him and talk about the things that nobody else is talking about, because it is the thing that people need to talk about the most. But for some reason, we're hesitant to talk about it. You see, our neighbors need us to talk about what no one else is talking about. They need it. They absolutely need it. Let me ask you a question. If you're a follower of Jesus, okay, and just kind of run this back for a minute. If you are a follower of Jesus, think back to when it clicks for you. For this woman, it's this moment at the well, and the next thing she knows, she's dropping her pots and she's running back to the city and she can't stop telling her story. Think back for you. When was that moment that it first clicked? And for some of you, maybe it was a couple of days ago, maybe it's a few weeks ago, months or years ago, decades ago. But think back to that moment when it first clicked, the life that God was giving you and what Jesus was providing for you. And as you think back to that, isn't it true? Isn't it true that he wondrously, gloriously, unexplainably saved you? That he washed away your sins, that he gave you a purpose and meaning, that he put and poured hope and a future into your life, that he absolutely changed everything for you. Way beyond money and time and jobs and relationships and everything else, that he completely redefined who you are as a person. You know what? Let's talk about that too. Let's talk about that. Because they need you to talk about it. They absolutely need you to talk about it. And so this morning, I'm really just asking you one question. And I'm asking myself, don't hear me to just pour this all on everybody else, because I'm hearing this too. Will you talk about what no one else is talking about so that we can have the impact that no one else is having? I look around and again, you know, I've said this before, don't get hung up on what's going on in the world and culture and the nation and everything else. I just look at my street. I was talking to a couple of my neighbors yesterday. Man, they need to hear this. They absolutely need to hear it. People are upset. People are confused. People have been beaten down by this virus. People have been confused about what's happening. People are upset about the politics and the world around them. People are worried about everything. People are just consumed with this stuff. They need to hear. You know what? I get it. I get it. All that stuff's going on. You're right. It's true. God has something better for you. I know you're not living the life that you thought you were going to live, because God created you for something better. And I want you to know that it's available to you. I want you to know that things can be different. And I love you too much to leave you broken and hopeless. I don't want to do that to you. I want to close with something that's a little odd, and for some of you, maybe a little disturbing. Maybe in a funny way, it's disturbing. But this is a milk snake. And this milk snake that I want to show you has, it has two heads. And so some of you don't like snakes at all, so a snake with two heads is even weirder. So let's put that picture up of a milk snake. But this snake was found in Florida. And what's interesting about it is it's not crazy for a snake to have an extra head, but usually it's kind of like it's just dangling there. It doesn't really do anything. But this particular snake actually has two brains. He has two brains, one body, one stomach, right? And it's kind of a unique thing. I'm not saying it's never happened, but it doesn't happen very often. And it's alive, and the people are taking care of it, but they can't release it into the wild. And as I started reading about it, I'm like, why can't you do that? And they said, really, there's two big reasons. With two brains, the snake would be tempted potentially to go two different directions at once. And it could literally pull itself apart, which sounds crazy, but and it's kind of icky. But basically, this snake, he's like, if one side goes, hey, I'm going left, I'm going right, and that could be a problem. The other issue is for when it comes to food. Now, they only have one stomach together, but they see the heads will fight over food if they don't feed them the same food at the same time. And so they figured out what will happen is the heads will attack each other and it will kill itself if they don't feed it that way. Because it has two brains, which is just kind of crazy to me. And so the long and the short of it is, I'm sure there's all kind of biological explanation, blah, 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 blah. It can't focus. It can't focus with two brains. You just can't do it. As I thought about that, I thought, that's us. That's us. Mountain Ridge Church. I mean, we've been talking about this for the last several weeks, and we've said unequivocally that God is for you. He absolutely is. He's the Father that runs after you. He's the Father that invites you into the house and makes room for you at the table, and he brings you in, and you belong. You're not a guest. You become his son, his daughter. He will bring you into his home, into his family. He will put other people around you so that together you can follow him and walk with him and have the life that he created you to live. He gives you the opportunity to be his ambassador, to go around representing him everywhere else. God is for you. And as an extension, our church, it's me and you, right? It's you and I together as we follow Jesus. That's what the church is. It's not the names, it's not the buildings, not all those other things. The church, Mountain Ridge is for you because God is for you. We can't have two brains. We can only have one mission. There's only really one thing we can be about. Yes, there's a lot of stuff going around in the world, and don't get me wrong, some of it's good and a lot of it's bad, but we only have one brain. We have one focus. We have one mission. Because otherwise, much like the milk snake, we could pull ourselves apart. We could start fighting with ourselves. But when we have one focus, to bring people back to God, all of a sudden, everything works. It does mean we're going to have some conversations that nobody else is having. And so I want to invite you, I want to challenge you, I just want to kind of leave you with this as a church today. Would you be willing, together, we can do this. Would you be willing to say, you know what, I'm going to sidestep the controversy. I'm going to sidestep the comparisons. I'm going to sidestep the confusion. I'm not going to pretend that they don't exist. It doesn't mean I'll never talk about them. I know they're out there. But I'm going to put my best. I'm going to put my best conversational energy, put my best thought, my best passion into talking about what nobody else is talking about. Because I know if I do that, it's the thing that people need the most, and it's the thing that will have the most impact. And on top of all of that, Jesus promises us. He says, if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to do what your Father called you to do, you will find nothing more satisfying in your life than that.